Hello world, this is Lisa Fredrickson, your friendly computer science professor. And in this short screencast, we're going to talk about JavaScript scope. Scope basically determines where variables and functions may be accessed. A global variable that can run anywhere, or a local variable which is inside a function. And I think the best way to demonstrate this is just to go through some examples. So in this first example, I'm declaring I as a global, also called a window variable, because if we're not inside a function, that variable gets attached to the global scope, the window object. So here I've declared I, set it to 999, and now I'm running I through a for loop from 0 to less than 10, incrementing by 1, and console logging inside the loop what is the value of I. After that loop runs, I'm console logging out example 1, I after the loop is, and then I. And as you can see in my console, I'll clear it and rerun this code. My loop runs 10 times, 0 through 9, and then example 1, I after loop is now 10. The reason why it's not 999 is because I've reassigned I to 0, and the 999 becomes irrelevant in this first example. So all of this code is in the global scope. Let's try another example. In example 2, I'm declaring a function named counter2. I'm declaring a variable inside the function, so it won't be global. J will only be available to that function, and I'm running it through this for loop 10 times, 10 through 19, incrementing by 1. Again, I'm console logging out while I'm in the loop what is J, and then I'm going to run my counter2 function. Finally, I'm going to console log example 2, J after the loop, after I run this counter2 function is what? Let's see what that gives us. So inside the loop, J is 10 through 19 as expected, but this statement here, number 27, is giving me a reference error. J is not defined, and the reason why I cannot console log J outside of the function is because this function scope protects J. So J is only allowed inside that function. That's why we often have many functions and we use the same counter, I, for our loops, because that I is protected inside that function, so we can reuse that variable name if desired. So I cannot call J outside of this function because J's scope is in the function. Example 3 is kind of interesting. I'm declaring K inside the function, but I'm failing to use the keyword var. And anytime you're inside a function and you declare a new variable without the var keyword, K becomes a global variable. So let's run this as well. I'm starting K at 100. It's a global variable. I'm running it through a loop 10 times. I'm incrementing by 1, console logging it out, running that counter3 function, and console logging out K. And this time I get my 100 through 109 in my counter3 loop, but example 3, K after the loop is 110. And I can do that because I have mistakenly perhaps made K a global variable. Now you can prevent this because that's typically a mistake. You can prevent that from happening by using use strict as the first line in your script. So you'll just want to copy that statement and stick it at the very top line of your script. Now I've got K is not defined because even though K is in this function without the var, use strict has prevented me from making that a global variable. Let's look at example 4. Use an immediately invoked function expression. And by doing so, I can protect the scope of a variable within the function. So in this case, I've declared M to be 555. I've also got a function here that's immediately invoked called counter4, and it's going to set var, the same letter M, to 150. And then I'm running through a loop from 150 to 159, incrementing by 1, console logging out in the loop what is M. At the end of my function that's being immediately invoked, I'm console logging out example 4, M after the loop is M, and in this case this M is going to pick up the global M, not the local M, because that M is trapped inside the function. And inside the loop I'm getting M is 150 to 159, but after the loop M is 555, my global M, because this M has been protected by the function. Okay, example 5. Again, we're going to use another immediately invoked function expression, and we're going to declare M as 555, but not use our var keyword, and also not use our use strict statement at the top of our script. This means that when I come in here and reassign m, I'm making that a global variable, so I'm actually changing the value of 555 to 150. And let's see that run. So in example 5, m after going through its loop is now 160 because this 555 becomes irrelevant given that I've overridden it with 150 inside my function. So all this proves is it doesn't matter if we're using an immediately invoked function expression or just a function. If you fail to put var in front of your variable names inside a function, and you also fail to use strict at the top of your script, you will be either creating or overriding a global variable. We all start out typically learning about global scope, the window object, as well as local scope within a particular function. But with the latest version of JavaScript, we also have block level scope. If we use let, we will scope the variable to that block. So let is really the new var. I can use var and let together, or I can just use let. But I do want to show you that if I create a global variable n, and then I let that n be something else for this particular block, that they will not collide. Let's save and refresh that. So here in the loop, I am console logging out n 5 times, 0 through 4. But when I console log outside of that block, n is picking up the global variable value of 777. This will work even if I let n in the global scope be 777, and then I let n for this block be something else. And notice that I do not have the protection of a function here. I just have a block of code, this for loop, and n is taking on that value just for this particular block. So that's what you're going to see in the future, I think, is let versus var, because it allows you to have global scope, function scope, as well as block level scope. A couple more things to be aware of. If I do not want that number to change, then I can use const, C-O-N-S-T, for constant. If I create a constant number 2 and assign it a 6, I cannot reassign that number to a new value. Now there's one more twist on the const declaration with objects. If I declare a new object with the name girl and set these properties on that object, I cannot reassign girl to different object properties. I cannot reassign that variable, which is actually an object. That is not allowed. However, if I define an object as a constant, I can change the properties within that object. Save, refresh, and when I console out girl, my first name is now Samantha instead of its initial assignment of Lisa. So in summary, you're going to start your JavaScript career probably seeing a lot of var for variables, and realize that variables and functions have both global scope and within a function scope. And if you fail to use var and you declare a variable inside a function, you will be creating a global variable whether you want it or not. Of course, the way to prevent that is to use strict as the first line of your script, which will not allow you to create global variables inside a function inadvertently. But realize that going forward, instead of using var, you'll probably be using let most of the time because it has global, function, or even block scope capabilities. Or you might use const, which allows you to declare a constant, which does not let you reassign the value to that constant, no matter what the constant represents. However, if the constant is an object, you can change the property values. Thank you.